Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
At this point, we usually go around and say our names. And our speaker today is going to talk about meditation. Actually, I'll just go ahead and introduce her, who is the head of practice at Green Gulch Farm. This is her second visit. And so, when we go around and say our names, if we'd also say what brought us here today. Who and I thought that would be a good question if you can give a short answer. So my name's Bob, and what brought me here today was my commitment to the Sangha, which meant I came early and said, and my feet.
My name's Heir, and what brought me, I guess, is the peace or the period of time. Here.
My name is Bruein, and I was brought here. I like the idea of commitment to community and practice, and I got a ride in a lovely chariot from Georgia.
My name is Scott. I'm here for the practice, I guess. I'm not sure how else to say it in a few words.
My name is Michael. I'm here for help with discipline.
I'm George. My practice and my truck.
Nicholas. Community Sangha.
I'm Bill. What brought me here was practice and fellowship. I'm Lee. I'm not sure.
I'm Paul, and I would say my motivation to rekindle my practice.
My name is Patrick, and I can here to meditate and focus on the inner person.
I'm Randy. I'm here because it's home.
I'm Carl, and I'm here for fellowship and a peaceful place to meditate. And I carpooled here in George's cruiser.
I'm Kurt, and I woke up with a very noisy head, and I said I need help.
And I came here for meditation in the community.
I'm Peter. I came here to take refuge from violence in the outside world in my mind, and I got here on part.
I'm Snake. The three treasures and the four noble truths.
I'm David. Have energy.
Buzz, stay here for some peace and fellowship.
Chad, for nourishment. Peter, and this is my Sunday morning routine.
I'm Steve, and likewise, this is one of the better habits that I've cultivated.
I'm Jim, I ride by car, so I go on Sundays for meditation and fellowship. And today especially I'm escaping house guests.
I'm Lucas, I just moved to San Francisco, and I'm here because life just has its way.
I'm Jay. I just recently started enjoying peace, meditation, and learning.
I'm Don, and I came to take refuge in the sun.
I'm Clinton. Sangha and meditation.
I'm Fu, and I'm also taking refuge in Sangha and coming here today. Sangha is much bigger than we can see. So, happy to see all of you. I was taking a shower this morning and the thought came to me, unbidden, you better practice what you preach. So, I find it much easier to think and talk about practice than actually to notice if I'm doing it or not. And so I am going to talk about practice today, but really I want you to know that all I care about is whether I'm practicing or not, and I'm never sure. But that's the part that I care about most. So I want to tell you some stories from the Buddhist tradition. I personally have found my way into a Zen Sangha when I was 29 years old and had yet to find my way out. So it explains a lot about why I look the way I look. What I'm going to say. I've been really formed by my life in Sangha, and mostly I know that it was a good choice because I'm very grateful. And I'm very grateful all the time. So I think that's the litmus for us in our lives. Are we grateful? So this story I'm going to start with is from the Book of Serenity. I don't know if any of you know that book. It's a collection of koans, and it's quite held quite dear by the Soto Zen tradition, which is the tradition that I find myself in, the flow of thought and practice. And this particular story is one that I was given by my teacher to study when I was the head student at Green Gulch some years ago now. And it's about a Raja and a monk. So it's case 3, and it's called The Invitation of the Ancestor to Eastern India. And just a little background, this ancestor, whose name is Prajnatara means wisdom, I forget the Tara part, wisdom or something. He was the teacher of Bodhidharma. So Prajnatara was the last Indian master, but he was in a long line of Indian masters, so he was in a culture that was Buddhist and had been Buddhist for many centuries. So this is be like being Catholic in Spain or something, been that way for a long time. And Prajnatara's disciple Bodhidharma went to China. And China was new. It was a new thing in China, like it is here in this culture for us. Buddhism is pretty new. We don't know what it is exactly, and we're trying to figure it out. So the Raj of an East Indian country invited the 27th Buddhist ancestor, Prajnatara, to a feast. The Raj asked him, "Why don't you read scriptures?" The ancestor replied, "This poor wayfarer doesn't dwell in the realms of the body or mind when breathing in, doesn't get involved in myriad circumstances when breathing out. I always reiterate such a scripture, hundreds, thousands, millions of scrolls." So this is what I want to talk about today, is our actual life from first breath to last is accompanied by breath. And this is the place the line that follows through all of our activity in the day, from the moment you awaken till you go to bed at night. You are most likely breathing. And because of that, breath is a very important touchstone for us as meditators. It's the one thing you can find. Whatever state of mind you've fallen into, you can come back to your breath. It's right there. And it's also underneath whatever you're thinking. Thinking is not bothered by breath. And breath is not bothered by thinking. So you can take refuge in your breath any time during the day. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is tranquility practice. How to bring yourself to peace. And most of you commented on how peaceful it is here, but really what you're saying is how peaceful I am at this moment. Well, why not all the time? What happens to us that we lose our peace? So there are two great systems of meditation practice that were taught by the Buddha and to his disciples and carried forward for now it's thousands of years. And one system is exactly this, practicing peace, tranquility. And the other great system, which is on top of tranquility and can only happen if you are tranquil, is the system of insight, or vipassana. So these two have Sanskrit names. The first one, tranquility practice, is called shamatha practice, shamatha, peaceful word. And insight practice is called vipassana, looking into, seeing into the truth of reality. So I was thinking that this is the way that we develop shamatha is through practices of mindfulness. Mindfulness of breath is a very common practice for all traditions in Buddhism. So I had an image in my mind of a kind of 4-layer cake in the shape of a seated person, like most of you in the front row here. It's a 4-layer cake, and on the bottom layer is tranquility practice. That's the base. When you establish tranquility, then the next layer is called samadhi, or concentration. And I think in the early days of Zen, we all thought samadhi was kind of the end game. You know, you get samadhi, you had samadhi or kensho or something like that. It's like, but I think really what we're trying to understand is how samadhi is a tool, peace is a tool, and then samadhi evolves as you're peaceful over time. If you all sat here all day today, you'd be really concentrated. By 9 o'clock tonight, you would have great big eyes and a lot of energy, which is what happens when we sit all day. Or during our 7-day sittings, people come out of there just very cleaned off. A lot of space for the world to enter. Not much coming off. Just spaciousness. So that's samadhi. And samadhi is a natural byproduct of peace. As you're peaceful, you begin to concentrate. You become more concentrated. You don't blow it off by doing things. You beat by activity. So we keep sitting. The longer you sit, the more concentrated. More concentrated. And as you become concentrated, then you're ready for the next layer of the cake, which is insight, or vipassana. So based in tranquility, shamatha, there arises concentration, samadhi. Based in samadhi, there arises vipassana, insight. And based in insight, there arises prajna, wisdom. So that's what this Buddha is. And on the top of his head, that's the wisdom bulb. It's like a light bulb. It turns on as this cake gets cooked. It starts to radiate understanding about the world, about reality, about itself. What is it? That was the Buddha's koan. What is a human being? After his enlightenment, someone asked him, "Are you a human being?" He said, "No." He said, "Are you a god?" He said, "No." "Are you a spirit?" He said, "No." I think they guessed a few more things. "A warrior?" "No." He said, what are you?" He said, "I'm a Buddha. I'm awake." The way this man, this young prince, found his way into what he called awake, what we call awake, was through the very same forces that all of us face in our daily life, the forces of fear and confusion and loneliness and anxiety and greed and hatred. And these are the swamps and the forests that the Buddha walked through as a young man, very frightened, very lonely. He'd left his family and his world of privilege and was trying to find his way. And there wasn't a lot of help. There was, fortunately though, there was yoga, and there were masters of tranquility. And one of the first teachers of the Buddha found on his own journey was a teacher of tranquility, a master of peace. And the Buddha mastered that practice, shamatha and samadhi. However, the problem with shamatha and samadhi is that they're very nice while you've got them, but they don't last. So once you go back into your active day, once you move away from this room where peace abides, where you are at peace, what happens out there? What's going on? And part of it is that we don't really know how to maintain that tranquility when things come at us. Cars and people, and when we have needs that we can't satisfy and so on. So there's a disturbance in the pond. Too many frogs jumping all at once. So we're on the path. What the Buddha said is that what he discovered as he was seeking his own way of abiding in peace, he didn't just want to visit there, he wanted to live there. So what he said he found was an ancient trail or an ancient path, an ancient way. And this is what we now call the Buddha way. But he said, I didn't invent this. This is actually your inheritance. It's already in you. It's already within you to have this peaceful abiding. You need to discover it, and when you discover it, you need to cultivate it. And it's like a muscle that can atrophy if it's not strengthened. So he gave practices to his students in order to cultivate peace. And the first of these practices is the one I mentioned first, the baseline of tranquility practice. Those bodhisattvas, this is from the Pali Canon, the old wisdom teachings, those bodhisattvas abiding and depending on an unwavering resolution, that is, to expound the teachings for the welfare of all beings and to become unsurpassably, perfectly enlightened, must cultivate tranquility and insight. So, this statement by the Buddha offered to his students was, this is what you must cultivate, tranquility and insight. These are the two parts, the two pieces, the two wings of the bird, for the bird to fly tranquil and peaceful, or calming the mind and then discerning the real. This is this four-layer cake. So I also wanted to mention just a little bit about how we learn, in the tradition it's understood that we learn, because I think it's easy to get frustrated when you're approaching something new that you already know how to do. I see that with my daughter. She just I don't know how to do that, and I'm never going to, because I'm not going to sit here and put up with this not knowing. So how to bring that colt into harness so that you can actually ride it someday is really the big challenge for us. We don't know how to sit still. We're restless. So what do we do? So the teaching is basically that there is a wisdom in you already, a wisdom that understands as soon as you hear something that makes sense to you, and you go, that makes sense to me. That's your wisdom making contact. So wisdom isn't outside somewhere. It's what you recognize. And this wisdom, inherent wisdom that's in you, that knows when it sees a good thing, is called Shrutamai Prajna. Shrutamai means the wisdom that comes from hearing, comes with hearing, with seeing. The wisdom that knows at a glance. So that's why oftentimes when you hear a Dharma talk, or you read a Dharma lecture, or you see a form, a peaceful form that inspires you, a work of art, right away you know. You know completely, and you know all you'll ever need to know. But when you take the object away, then you feel like you don't know. I have to go back to the museum to know. You don't recognize that it's in you all the time. What's knowing is coming from inside of you. So for a while we depend on outside sources to reflect for us our own wisdom, to listen. So we listen. And there's pictures of the Buddha talking to the disciples, and the disciples are listening. They're even leaning like this with their ears. They're listening to what the Buddha says. So for a long time, we engage by listening, by looking. So that's Shruttamai Prajna, the wisdom of knowing at a glance, of knowing what you see. The next step in learning is called Chintamai Prajna, which means the wisdom that comes from studying what you've heard. This is the part my daughter doesn't want to do, the homework. So you've heard the material, you really do understand it, you apply yourself to it, and you begin to learn it for yourself. And it's a little raw, usually. A lot of the students I meet with are really brand new, and they're embarrassed not to already know, so they try to know. And then I'm kind of embarrassed because they're not satisfied to not know. They want me to think they know something they don't really know yet. And so we do a little dance together, like me reassuring them that it's okay that you don't know. And then that embarrasses them further because it's so obvious they don't know. Anyway, but having been there and still feeling there many times, I have a lot of sympathy for the process and do really want to just encourage people, don't get discouraged. Keep looking and keep trying out your ideas. Keep going. You're doing great. So this is Chintamai Prajna, the prajna of learning, of studying. So there's also another way we talk about carving the dragon into your own thought patterns, into your own physical body. What I was just doing and bowing and how we gesture and so on. I learned these things by watching them done by someone else, by trying them out, feeling kind of awkward. And then little by little, I find a way with my own body that's like a shape. It feels good. Like, that feels good to me. So you become what you study. What you put into yourself becomes transformative. So this is the third type of wisdom, which is called Bhavanamaya Prajna, or the wisdom of becoming. The dragon is no longer being carved. You are the dragon. You've become the dragon. You've become the dharma. You are a dharma entity, like the Buddha said. I'm not a human being. I'm not a god. I'm awake. Wow. So he carved awakening into his body, into his mind. He woke up. He woke up like the morning sun. That's how they described him when they saw him. He was like the morning sun. Very bright, very inspiring. He inspired people by who he had become through his practice. So this process takes a lot of repetition. I've been reading quite a bit of Western psychological theory, very interested in what those guys are up to too. And I like it. I think it's wonderful. I have a therapist, and I've always been wondering what he's doing with me. It's 10 years that we've been together. And now I appreciate it. There's a lot of just going back in there with someone who unconditionally is listening to you. And I also heard from a friend who's been doing hospice work that one of her mentors said, listening is so close to love that when we listen to people, the one who we are listening to actually experiences it as love. And I think that's the healing medicine for all of us is love. It's kind of an old beat-up word, but love is this not separate feeling. I'm not somebody who excludes the world from my life. I'm not isolated and alone. I belong to this world. I love this world. Loving the world is all we really want. To love the world and take care of it, and to love all the other people that are here and share our space with them and them with us. So I often say to people, I think what the Buddha saw, I think you may know the story, that he woke up when he looked at the morning star. And I think what he saw was love. It's like, that's not outside of me. I'm including that. I'm including everything. I love this world, and boy, does it hurt to love this world. And I think a lot of times all that's happened to us when we're not in love is that we're so hurt by the suffering of the world. And that's the koan that we need to bear and that we need to find out. How can we feel so much pain in this world? For ourselves too. Not just like for those people over there, but what about all my losses? How can I sustain the suffering of this world and still find a way to continue to love, to not shut down, to protect? So, part of the big theory is that you have to get rid of yourself. You have to let yourself go. When there's no self, there's no selfishness, there's no self-concern, there's no, this is mine and you can't have it. You give up self-concern, and that's exactly the core of the Buddhist teaching was, but the good news is there wasn't one anyway. It's a fantasy. There isn't a self. There isn't anything to protect. We're making it up. We made it up so long ago that we forgot how we even did it. The children know. They're trying on different things. I'm a cowboy. I'm a fireman. I'm a bad guy. They try all that stuff. But as we get older, we reify some of those ideas. And we make a self that's kind of bondage. So a big piece of our initial practice is to deconstruct that self, let it go, and find out what happens when you regain your vulnerability. And where does your strength come from then? When you have no defenses. I am now defenseless. You may attack me. Please don't. So you have to trust other people. Your fate is in the hands of those around you. And that's a big step. So someone said the story of a samurai who was in a cave a monk. The monk was in the cave and the samurai came in and said, "Aren't you afraid?" And the monk said, "No." And he said, "Don't you know I'm the one who can kill you?" And the monk said, "Don't you know I'm the one who can be killed?" Saved his life. Like Woody Allen, Tell a joke, So I also wanted to read to you a little bit from the Anapanasati Sutta from the Old Wisdom Teachings. And this is Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra, which, as I said earlier, is one of the basic meditations for tranquility. So this is baseline, starting at the bottom, tranquil. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. This is the Buddha talking. Hear a monk gone to the forest, or to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, or to a lovely basement in San Francisco, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he breathes in. Ever mindful, she breathes out. Breathing in long, she understands. I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands. I breathe out long. Breathing in short, she understands. I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, she understands. I breathe out short. He trains thus. I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. He trains thus. I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily formation. And so on, through rapture, pleasure, and mental formations, through awareness of mind, the gladdening of mind, the concentrating of mind, and the liberating of mind. And so on, through contemplation of impermanence, of fading away, of cessation, and of relinquishment. And so on, through the fulfillment of the 7 factors of enlightenment: mindfulness, investigation of states, tireless energy, unworldly rapture, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Monks, that is how the 7 enlightenment factors, developed and cultivated, fulfill true knowledge and deliverance. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So no matter what, if you're in bliss, if you're in pain, if you're riding BART, whatever you're doing, mindfulness of breath. Mindfulness of breath. Just always knowing, I breathe out, I breathe in. You don't have to think about it. It's more like just touching your own body with your mind, just like a touchstone. This was the practice of Prajnatara, the ancestor. Breathing in, breathing out. Millions of scrolls. I read these scriptures. Not getting involved in the realms of the body and mind. Not getting involved in the myriad circumstances. It doesn't mean you're not aware of them, myriad circumstances. But you're not messing with them. You're not picking at them. You're not criticizing them and judging them and pushing them away and hating them and loving them and wanting them. And all of that stuff, which is self-love, self-making. It's more than just holding them in awareness as you breathe. Holding your own feelings and your own thoughts in awareness as you breathe. Oh, I'm thinking that right now. How interesting. Just noticing how things arise. Like for me this morning, practice what you preach. Wow. Somebody's talking to me. I don't know who, but I heard it. I was listening. So I also wanted to say just a little bit about the next layer of the cake, which is the insight meditation. I would like to encourage you, as you practice meditation, to really know whether you're doing tranquility practice or whether you're doing insight practice. They're quite different. And if you want to do insight practice, then consider starting with tranquility first. So, and insight practice is actually done with a teaching of the Buddha as well. So it's fine to have insight about your friendships or what to do with your bank account or whatever. Those are insights too. But they're mundane, they're worldly, and they're necessary, and we require ourselves to be bright about things. But these insights that have to do with meditation are insights into the nature of reality, into the nature of mind itself. So the Buddha, when he sat under the tree, what he was looking at was his own mind. He was studying the workings of his own mind, of thought. And how does it work? How does the world come to be? It comes to be through my thinking. We think the world that we inhabit. When you're in a grouchy mood, it's a grouchy world. And when you're in a happy mood, it's a lovely world. So where's the change? Change is in the mind. So this is what we're working with, and this is our focus is, how am I thinking? What am I thinking? What am I believing? How am I reiterating the same patterns so that my feelings keep... feelings actually are very short-lived. If you have a negative feeling, you step on a piece of glass or something, it's like, Ach! It goes like that. They can put these things in your brain now, find out what you're doing in there. It's a very sharp response, and then it dies away. But if you go, why me? Does it again. It's not fair. Does it again. So you can do this by your thinking. You can reiterate the pain from whatever's happened to you all day long. It looks like one thing. I'm in a terrible mood today. You're not. You're in a terrible set of spikes. And you're spiking it by how you're thinking. And the only way to break in is to change your thinking. So the wisdom teachings have to do with, the basic one is no. You can talk to yourself like a dog. No. 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 One sentence after the other. Out they come. No. No. So Manjushri, is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, has a sword. It's the sword of cutting thoughts. One after the other. You just keep doing it. What will happen if you do that for 40 minutes is it'll stop. It really will. stop, and you'll be at peace again. But you have to do it. You have to intervene. If you just keep reiterating, you won't stop. Your misery will be unending. Just this unfortunate each soul. So insight practice is done with the base of tranquility. Then you begin to study something about reality, something about the nature of mind. If you're very calm, you can actually see thoughts arise. That's during long sittings, during long week sittings, you can actually, if you calm down enough, you can see a thought appear. Slow, it's going slow. And you can see it abide, and you can see it vanish. And my experience of having awareness of thoughts arising, it was kind of like, the first time it happened when I was sitting, it was like a volcano. This thing came up out of nowhere, and it was really energetic. And I thought, that explains everything. My thinking is so powerful. It's so powerful. It will move me across the United States. I'll buy a plane ticket and fly 3,000 miles based on a thought. I want to, whatever it is. We are really driven by our thoughts. They're powerful. They're powerful motivators of our bodies. So that was the insight I had was, whoa, watch out. How powerful my thinking is. So one of the things that distinguished the Buddha from the other philosophers of his day, and there were many, as there are today, they're pretty much the same stripes. They're the materialists, the shoppers, and on the other end are the ascetics, people who don't want anything, no thank you, I've had enough. They're into pushing away pleasure. So there's basically a spectrum from pleasure to pain, and then everything along the way. For some, there's the idea of eternal. Something eternal is a pleasure, gives them some sense of I'm saved, or I belong, or I'm held. So that's the eternalists. And now we have people who believe in a single God. It's one possibility, or singularity, that all is one. Is that kind of thing? So that's one very common way of thinking about the universe that people have created. Another way is there's nothing. The nihilists. I'm not falling for it. I don't believe in anything. So these are all on the spectrum of, basically, the fundamental spectrum is there is something or there isn't anything. And this is much more indicative of how human mind works than of reality. Human mind works in a binary fashion. There either is something or there isn't. And we make our children confess, you either did it or you didn't. One or the other. There's nothing in between. But actually there is something in between, which is Buddhist wisdom is in between. It says no dualistic thinking. That's just dualistic thinking. Right and wrong, good and evil, me and you, inside and outside. These are all binary notions. Before and after. Late and early. Up and down. They're all creations, concepts. We've invented them. And we plaster the world with our concepts, nonstop. And we think that's the world, our concepts. But actually it's not. So that was the Buddha's insight. He said, he came out of meditation trances, very deep explorations of himself, and what he said was, I find no evidence for or against anything. It's kind of tough with November 2nd coming, What are we going to do? How are you going to vote? Wait a minute. If I can't be for or against anything. So he said, this is the middle way. You don't take positions. You don't hold positions. When you hold positions, you will fight. You will quarrel and you will hate. You can appreciate positions. You can look at them and study them and value them like a butterfly on your hand. That's okay. But don't squish the butterfly. Don't hold it. Just appreciate it and offer it and let it go. It's So this is the approach of peace. This is what we're trying to find, how to be peaceful and still think clearly about the world. So the Buddha taught the middle way between the extremes. Avoid the extremes, whatever they are. Find the middle way. There's an exchange that took place between the Buddha and a very famous skeptic of his day called Dikanaka. The skeptic is pretty good philosophy if you read the skeptics, the Greek skeptics. They're almost the Buddhists. They're very close to Buddhism in their understanding. So the skeptic says, Master Gautama, my view and my theory is this. I have no liking for views. Sounds pretty good. The Buddha replied, and this view of yours, I have no liking for views. Have you no liking for that as well? So it's hard, we keep backing up. We want to get to a place where we think we're really wise and we've got it figured out, but then where's the clutching? Where's the grabbing? Where's the, I understand, I know, I'm the one. So there's self-making behavior. So how to go forward with some of your wonderful ideas and offer them out, It's a different direction, not clinging. So one other warning that the Buddha posted for all of us that we're to follow was the warning against seeing shamatha, tranquility, as holding that view that you have achieved tranquility as well. And there's a wonderful sutra called the 5 and 3, and he tells his disciples that those monks whose behaviors are not entirely wholesome, or who lack resolve concerning the fetter of sensual pleasure, and who have become intoxicated with the rapture of seclusion, may regard themselves this way. I am at peace. I have attained nirvana. I am without clinging. Such a monk is in fact clinging to the view of themself at peace. And this too is declared to be clinging on the part of this good recluse or this monk. So there's no place to hide. Buddha went after all of them. He said, what are you doing? I'm dwelling in peace. And he said, I don't think so. You need a cup of coffee or something. So there's no place to stop. Life isn't about impermanence, about appreciating that things change and they transform, and that we really basically want to be awake. That's the idea. You're really with what's happening. And it's not your enemy. You're not making enemies out of what's happening. And sometimes the grieving is appropriate. So some of what's happening is very sad. So over and over again, the practices in the Buddhist tradition are directing us to look back on the mind that thinks, to look into the clockwork of our own delusion, of our own frustration, of our own machinery of thinking. Well, how is that? And I want to close with the story of the Buddha and his encounter with Mara. Mara's the evil one in Buddhism. He's a little bit like the devil, but he's what should I say? What's the difference there? I think actually in one of the Buddhist sutras, Mara is actually shown to be a great teacher. He's a great bodhisattva. He comes and pokes. He's poking at the Buddha to see if he's asleep, if he's fooling himself. So in a way, Mara's kind of like a trickster or a joker who's testing the Buddha's resolve. So the Buddha's in the garden, and Mara comes, and this is a scene that a novelist wrote this scene into a book about the Buddha's life. It was very, very clever, called The Lady of the Lotus, and really a sweet novel. So he says, Mara comes to the Buddha when he's under the Bodhi tree, and he says to the Buddha, if you don't leave this place, I'll destroy you. And the Buddha says, well, but I know who you are. And Mara says, no, you don't know who I am. You'll never know who I am. And Buddha says, but I do know who you are. And then Mara grows anxious and hisses, you'll never know who I am. And Buddha says very quietly, you are myself. And with that, Mara vanishes. And the Buddha is sitting quietly under a tree in the forest. anything you'd like to speak about or share? Jim?
When you say you heard a voice say, practice what you preach,
Yeah.
where do you understand that comes from?
Well, the first thought I had was, I've been studying neurobiology. It's neurons. Cogent neurons that come to the surface. I really don't know. I have no way of knowing. There's some seed that just sprouted right then, and it seemed like, there were a lot of seeds sprouting during that shower. That wasn't the only one. But that's the one that I attended to. It had meaning for me. So perhaps we're just extracting meaningful gibberish out of all of the offerings that are going on all the time. That one really was loud, and it was as if a voice coming from deep inside of me. It was a man's voice. Kind of like, Dad, practice what you preach. And it wasn't unkind. It wasn't mean. So I took it quite seriously and took it to heart.
I heard a voice last night. I have to do this list coming up. But it was loud. It was like in my speakers. And I was just walking down my hallway and said, Jim, Bush is going to lose. Try to relax. And I've been clinging to this.
Well, that voice was wrong. He's not going to lose. No, he is going to lose.
He is going to lose.
Did you say he's going to win?
No, he said Bush is going to lose. Try to relax.
Oh, I see. I thought you said Bush is going to win. I heard Bush is going to win. Try to relax. That would be a better trick, wouldn't it?
Thank you. That's very enlightening. And there was one thing that you had talked about that it brought up a dialogue that I've been having with a Buddhist friend, and that was the issue about pain. And if I heard correctly, you said cut it off, remove it, just tell it to stop. And if I was hearing correctly, that seems in contrast to what I've heard and believe from other Buddhist teachers, essentially that you have to experience it, and to attempt to just find something is going into this, staying in tranquility and not dealing with the need for insight. So I wonder if you could elucidate.
Yeah, well, in the sense, I don't think I was saying pain, it was thoughts. Painful thoughts.
Well, that's what I'm...
Yeah, because pain is neutral. When you step on the glass, that's neutral. There's no judgment there. Just you stepped on a piece of glass. That somehow you don't deserve this, and that's the pain that the Buddha was talking about. That we suffer the suffering of suffering. There's suffering, but that's neutral. When we judge what's happened to us as bad or wrong or unfair, that's the kind of suffering that we're really trying to work with in practice. So that's what you can cut that off, and you can because it's actually not valid. It's not a valid kind of thinking, and so it's really okay to cut off. You can also just listen to it if you want, patiently, and it will eventually subside. If you just sit down after you start ranting about what's just happened to you, if you get hit, if your car gets hit from behind and all of that anxiety starts voicing in your head, you can just sit there and it'll stop eventually.
I'm sure that I understand. I'm thinking of the kinds of circumstances when a thought or a memory, perhaps about a relationship, perhaps about something else comes up, and I say, that's uncomfortable. I'm going to go meditate so that it'll go away.
Oh, I see. Okay, well that's okay. I am recommending that while you're meditating. It's not going to go away. You don't have to worry about that. It's out there with our shoes, Whatever our life is, the karma of our life is pretty sturdy, and we still will have to deal with grief and meeting those relationships in the best way we can. Like that I'm sorry card or whatever it is, or that it's not going to continue, and grieving that. That's healthy human responses to those things. And certainly that's what I do in therapy, is talk about my karmic life. When I'm sitting in meditation hall, I'm not doing that. I'm actually working with tranquility, understanding, and I can't. My danger, I think, the reason I went into therapy is that I had figured out how to cut it off as a practitioner, and it was not a good thing, because what happened, and it's called the Zen sickness. You can, with your mind and with this little sword, you can put your karmic life, like you can become like a kind of a bubble boy, and make all of the arrows will land like outside your target area. So I felt really like I had mastered the universe at one point. When I was down at Tassajara, I was like, I'm not bothered by anything. And if you have a problem, that's your problem, not my problem. So I wasn't getting touched. I had really clicked into this place where I wasn't being affected by things that were happening that I was doing. So I don't think I figured that out by myself. Actually, it was a teaching that was. It's called the Zen sickness. It's a trance. It's a trance. It's an enchantment, like a glass casket. That's the image that came to me in a dream. You're in a glass casket. And the thing that broke me out of it was a teaching by Nagarjuna, the great master of the emptiness. See, the emptiness teachings are very dangerous, because you can slip into what basically it was nihilism, like what I was doing. It was nihilistic. And I was mistaking emptiness for nothing. This isn't happening. So, because it's possible to slip into that trance, there's a big warning signs on the label, to watch out for nihilism. But as a person, it's hard to spot it in yourself, because it feels really close to what you imagine enlightenment might be like. And that's the danger. So I actually, in studying Nagarjuna, there's a line where he says, basically, that ultimate reality is none other than the conventional world. And I read that, and I read it again, and I asked my teacher about it, and I read it again, and it was kind of like... Well, I was in so much pain. I was just like bleeding all over the floor. I was all the pain that I had been keeping back, it's like I couldn't believe it anymore. When I just didn't believe it, it didn't work. So and I really had to go into therapy, and I had to do the work of looking at those things that were still in my heart, like shards of glass. I had to do the work of getting... So I totally value therapy and the wisdom of the Western therapeutic tradition. And there's a wonderful book called Psychoanalysis in Buddhism, which is written by some therapists who are serious practitioners and teachers. And I think if you haven't had a chance to if you have interest in it, it's wonderful to read how they put these together.
I have a question about Soto Zen tradition. When you mentioned the 4 layers of the cake, it sounded very similar to Patanjali's Ashtanga, the 8 limbs of yoga, only you had only 4. And so I'm wondering, after samadhi, after vipassana, after insight, and so on, are there other states of consciousness that you just haven't described, or that are too difficult for our words to describe, or? Well,
there's the 4 jhanas, which follow upon, when you get... If you're sitting in meditation, you want to play with yourself. If you want to play with your mind, you can. You can do this stuff. Like pagoda. Some of that is basically representing these higher trances that you can enter. And there are little instructions in the texts of how you build on the one where you basically it's kind of like pushing off. Like you're in if you're in pleasure, then you forego, you don't let pleasure get a hold of you. If you let pleasure get a hold of you, then you're going to be in pleasure. Sorry. But if you're willing to let it go, then you'll go to equanimity, which is even better. So each of these is a better result. And then there's the top one is cosmic consciousness, which is you're basically equivalent to the universe. In terms of how you experience your mind, it has boundaryless, and there's just plenty of room for everything in it. And there's no inside or outside. There's no self. Experience of a self is no longer. So these are well known. They're called the jhanas. Jhanas. The word chan, Chinese word for Zen, is chan, which was a pronunciation the Chinese made of the word jhana. And Zen is the Japanese pronunciation of the word chan. So they're all referring to the jhanas. But as in Vipassana, I think those of you who study Vipassana tradition, there's wet Vipassana and there's dry Vipassana. Wet Vipassana says you have to experience the jhanas in order to have insight. Dry Vipassana says you don't have to do that. You can have insight at the normal level of human consciousness. Peaceful abiding is sufficient for insight, and that's where the Buddha had his insights, was not from the jhanas. He entered them, but then he used those simply to attain peace. But he came down from them because you can't think in the jhanas. There's no words. There aren't any concepts. So you can, what was her name? The woman, master Burmese teacher, Ayakema, taught jhanas while she was alive, and she has a book called, I can't remember. Anyway, she really, in great detail, if you're interested in studying jhanas, you can look it up and you can do them, and they're wonderful. But really the fruit comes from just being eternal. That's where your insight is going to happen. Yeah, you'll need language for insight.
We have to... Do you have an announcement, please? Yes.
My name is Don. For several issues, for even longer, it's been a request in the newsletter for books for prisoners, and then I put another, that's 2 issues there, so I put a request for people to come forward to help, which hasn't happened. Part of the books we've been writing. So I'm just simply putting this out. I'd like to get the steering committee. I think it has become maybe more just a thing that I think should be done.
This is the books for prisoners.
Well, I'm talking about the correspondence, the whole outreach. It does not seem to engage anybody but the fellowship. So I'm simply putting that out and asking, I don't know when or how we want to think about that, but I want to talk to the steering committee about it. That's, is it clear what I said?
It's clear what you said.
Okay.
Is there someone here who can put that on the agenda?
Sure. Yeah. We'll talk.
Okay.
At the risk of being self-serving, that your talk inspired me. I'm doing breath work through the yoga as preparation for meditation, and I teach other yoga classes. But coming up here in the city, I focused on people who have carpal tunnel problems. So I put an announcement out there, and there's another class starting if people are interested in working quietly with very restorative yoga. It is good for your meditation practice.
George?
Yes, a reminder that our talks are available on the internet at no charge at the GBF website, gaybuddhist.org.
Just the holiday season's coming around, and if anyone would like to host a potluck sometime in December, first time.
A couple things. One line. Unfortunately, the notice didn't get a newsletter. This is slip up, but Kay Lassiter is hosting a Thanksgiving potluck this year, and there will be flyers out, but it's just to get the word that it's still a ways away, but people will be having a good Thanksgiving. Just like second, the Casper Street Fair was a lot of fun, and we had a booth there for the first time. There are photos of that in the GBF Yahoo website. So if you want to see what it look like,
doesn't matter what the food look like, I'm part of the success now, that's all.
Is there a host today?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the host, and we've brought some snacks from Navalin Bakery, including a couple of vegan muffins out there. If you would like to stay and have a tea and snacks with the group, please do, and chat with chat with the community. If you use a teacup, please wash your own cup and put it back up. And if you can make a contribution, we have to rent the space and so on. If you have $5, that would be the standard. If you have more, that's great. If you have less, that's acceptable too. And should you ask about new members? My name is Jim. I'd be glad to talk to any new members who feel the need to. And afterwards, sometimes people go to lunch, so just stick around and see if there's a group that forms.
Okay, so at this point, we usually stand in a circle and hold hands and give you the offering of prayer.
May the merit of our being together extend to all beings in all places, those who are suffering and those who are in fear. And may the violence in this world please end.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.